IIT BHU. For this session, we'll be joined by Anshul Saxena, who is the Chief Business Officer at Xscale with an expertise in SaaS landscape. He is an IIM Ahmedabad graduate with 18 years of experience in product development, strategy, and business development. And he has helped numerous startups to grow from 0 to 1, raise funding, and build strong teams. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to our distinguished guest speaker, Anshul Saxena. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Priyadarshini, and thanks to the ESL team. I was also present on the pitch day last Friday, and I was very, it was very gladdening to know the kind of technology solution people are bringing to the table, and especially the kind of catalyst you are. So thanks for having me, and I hope I can add value to the entrepreneurs' lives and also give them some kind of implementable gear, as you would say. So guys, I will keep it a very interactive session. It's not something that will be a monologue or something that comes from me, because I have learned from startups a lot more than by reading or by experiencing it myself. So this is a very open session. Keep your thoughts and minds open, and whatever you want to ask, please raise your hands. Or if there is somebody to moderate the chats, we'll be glad to take their help and answer them as I go along. So thanks a lot for having me again. And a bit about myself. I have been Chief Business Officer for Xscale for almost 1.5 years now. And before that, I was leading the Financial Inclusion Lab with Ahmedabad, where we had set up and designed and run the lab for 55 odd startups until I moved out. And the lab was funded by JP Morgan's and Bill Melinda Gates Foundations and Omega networks of the world. Was a very marquee lab, biggest of its kind outside New York, outside the US, from JP Morgan, and a very prestigious lab. It's still running, and it's going from strength to strength. Has raised more than $100 million for in funding for the startups, and been glad to have led the lab. Also, I was leading fintech practice for my consulting company, a previous consulting company, and have had the luxury or experience of mentoring startups and learning from startups across the world, right from Francophone Africa, Anglophone Africa to Southeast Asia, Middle East, India, of course, and Bangladesh, and our neighboring countries as well. So intertwining all that experience, blending it all in one short session will not be possible, but I'll try to convince you guys to keep at your startups, no matter what, and what you guys are doing is going to change the world in one way or the other, and at worst, it's going to change you for the better, right? So there is absolutely no harm in doing your startup at such an early age with the support of institutes, which is absolutely critical to succeed. Also, I have been in the US, lived and worked there for 12 odd years. Was working in a fintech startup there that was started by my professor. So that actually gave me the first glimpse of how a startup works. And interestingly, SaaS was upcoming during that time, 2005 or 6 years. So I have kind of seen the early adoption of SaaS systems from the epicenter of it all, that was the US, and have kind of first-hand view of it. India, of course, it kind of amplified when it came to India, but those initial days when there were jitters about pushing your data, pushing your software to the cloud was a very scary thing to do. So I've been there, and we were on the first teams to deploy it for our fintech over the cloud after 1.5 good years of research, right? So we were very scared, and we took it bit by bit. I'll also tell you about those experiences as we move along. But yeah, let's get down to the cut the chase, as someone would say, and then take you through what I feel is important for you guys to learn from an entrepreneurial as well as from a cataclysmic point of view. So here we go. So what is SaaS, right? I mean, guys, can you see my screen? Oh wait, I'll just share it. So I hope. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Great. Okay. 1 second, I'll share it again. Can you see it still?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Because I can't see in Teams when I'm sharing screen, it just shows me the screen. So I think that is just a flaw or feature in Teams. So anyway, what is SaaS? SaaS is, as you may already be knowing, is just a subscription-based, access to the software that you would like to use. So for example, first Windows was you have to install the Windows software on your Office suite on your laptops and use it from there, and you have to spend a lot of money to buy those licenses, especially if you were a corporate or even if you were a startup. So that literally killed the entrepreneurial streak that we had in those days, because the expense to do this was huge. So that's where kind of SaaS was born. The idea of SaaS, software as service, was born, and the big corporates started tinkering on this right from, I think, 2002ish, right, when Salesforce kind of started playing around with it. So what is SaaS in a very simple term? What you see on your Prime videos, what you see on your Netflix is SaaS-based service, right? And you just pay very basic fees to access the videos there. In a similar way, when you're using my Office or any such suite that is available over the cloud, which includes Google Docs and everything. It is SaaS, right? So there is no rocket science anymore to it. We all know this. We just have to be knowing what goes on behind the scenes when you have to deploy a SaaS software. So touching upon a brief history of SaaS, it was started. The genesis was laid in early 1990s when cloud computing was emerging, and there were a small bit of companies here and there who were tinkering with how to do computing over a cloud, how to do grid computing, how to manage resources over remote, places, and that's where the initial thoughts about cloud and SaaS, for that matter, were born. Late 1990s, we saw the launch of Salesforce and NetSuite. And Salesforce, I mean, though it is very expensive, even as a native leader, I couldn't deploy Salesforce as much as I would have wanted to because of the sheer costs. Salesforce was one of the most pioneering, and has been the most pioneering, companies to kind of encourage the usage of SaaS, and was the first company that came out with a solid business model, which everybody, right from Oracle to Microsoft, kind of followed from there. So, with all due respect to them, it was there in 1990s already. And in 2000s and 2010s, we saw how, starting with Microsoft and the adoption of cloud computing technologies, it started to come into the homes, from corporate enterprise laptops or workstations to our own homes, right, as on personal computers. So it grew to that um, uh, extent that your pricing had fallen to a level where you could afford it as a single person or single user. And then in 2010, 20s, even now, you're seeing a boom in across each and every vertical of technology, right? From healthcare to fintech to even sports tech and cybersecurity. You're seeing SaaS-based solutions growing up everywhere. I mean, I don't know if you or I have installed any software on our laptops. I'm not talking about apps, but software as such on our, computers in the last 2 to 3 years, right? So that is the power of SaaS. That is the pervasiveness of SaaS that has come around. And in the current times, we're looking at a lot of automation software, a lot of chat GPT kind of software working out of SaaS, right? Remote computing is going on the cloud, and it's almost real time. Maybe there's edge computing, yes, but the speed of processing has increased manifold, that you now do not even feel that the computation is happening outside your boxes, so to speak, right? So this is what we have come through in these very few years. Okay, coming up to global trends in SaaS, and this is a question many of my startups ask me, and many of our investor friends also ask us. What is the future of SaaS globally? So, what I've done is I've tried to funnel it down from global to Mid Eastern and Asian, then right down to India, so that you get a context of what is the broader picture and to the more hyper local picture, if you will, about the SaaS trends in the industry. So global SaaS market is currently, as we stand, is $300 billion, and is expected to reach 623, almost double in the next 4 years, right? And most of it is going to be attributed to AI and automation. I think you're already seeing that. Nothing that you do cannot be done now on the cloud, right from creating hyper high quality images to processing your deep tech algorithms. Everything is now done through SaaS, done through cloud computing and everything. And you'll see a lot more of it. Even on mobiles, we'll start seeing that as a service, right? Um, there has been a growing focus on sustainability, and this is something we as investors we really look on from when we are investing in startups, scaling up startups for that matter. Are the solutions, the way they're using it, is it sustainable? And a major part of sustainability means that can you deploy it at scale with the least computing power that you need for. And these are high-end applications, right? So the more you deploy it in a responsive manner, sustainable, eco-friendly manner, those startups are the ones we really bet on today, because of not that we have gone very saintly about it, but it's a request from our limited partners. It's a request from our fund pool folks to look into these things very, very consciously. And this is how the trending or the investment trends have evolved over the last few months, I would say. Then we also see kind of caution and a lot of apprehensions in terms of data handling, and this has given rise to a lot of data privacy regulations across the US, where it started on, to I think European standards, and then trickling down into India, and now India is taking the lead actually to set the rails on how data has to be regulated, data has to be kept privatized, and who owns the data. So ONDC is a very good example. Data aggregation bill that was passed, or no, I shouldn't say bill, but data aggregation layer that was catalyzed by the government in that sense, public infrastructure, has been a great benchmark for the world to follow. Right. So India is leading that on that front, and obviously Bharat Stack and everything is contributing to all that. We'll also come into those details. If someone wants to ask me those questions, would be glad to uh, answer them for you. And then the fourth point is cybersecurity concerns, right? How do you keep your systems from and data, most importantly, from cyber attacks? And I'm very glad to say that there are many companies now that are coming up in India which are at par with the Israeli companies in cybersecurity, right? 2 years back, we were like 10 years behind the Israeli cybersecurity startups. But today, just in 2 years, Indian startups are getting technologically as sound as them and are deploying it. And see, there is not a lot of price wars that happen with Israel, right? Had it been an American company, you could have straight away deployed a solution or built a solution that was 1/10 of the price. But Israel, the prices are almost at par, right? With the Indian, I mean, they're not too expensive. And then we're competing with them. It shows how strong we have gotten in the last 2 to 3 years. And most of that is, I may be biased, but it has come from IITs, especially IIT Kanpur, IIT Delhi, and I hope IIT BHU also kind of pushes that envelope in cybersecurity, especially in SaaS. When we talk about the Middle East and Southeast Asian markets, I'll talk of them in a blended manner, because each of them are very different markets, but the DNA or the intention has been the same, right? They are much more appreciative of technology than Indian customers. The market size may not be as big as India, but it is very much attainable, right? For the same $1 billion that you would have spent years and years of efforts, you will spend almost one third or half of those efforts if you were selling to those markets. So that is a big difference. Statistically speaking, SaaS market is poised for growth there, as I've already shown you, $27 billion by 2025, because of yes, the mobile trends that have caught up and the very proactive government initiatives. I don't know how many of you were attending or following the Dubai a meetup that happened very recently, I think last week. Many of my startups were there, and even those who were not there, they were like keenly following it. And the kind of response every startup which got there to showcase its solutions, was immensely supportive. And they all come back with at least 3 to 4 solid leads. And I'm talking about $100,000 of TCV from there. Will they be able to convert it? Will they be able to run with that huge orders? I don't know. Nobody knows, but it's very encouraging. And they are in talks with very, very active use cases for the use case and with the investors as well. Second thing again that we see as per the trends in the global markets is the verticalization of SaaS. There are high demands in healthcare, finance, and education, and also digital twins for property tech and construction tech there in the Middle East, especially. Mobile first approach, yes. Now the most of them are uh, wanting to have those solutions or those apps built which can leverage SaaS offerings on a mobile phone. It wasn't that much 2 years back, but now almost everyone expects or takes it for granted that your solution as a startup can be deployed on their mobile phones or can be accessed to their mobile phones, right? And then the fourth trend that we are seeing very actively, not as much in India right now, but more very actively in the Southeast Asia and the Middle Eastern markets, is AI and blockchain. I mean, especially blockchain. AI is there in India, yes, but blockchain, crypto, as an extension of blockchain, one of those use cases is very, very encouraging outside India. And many of our startups are now, unfortunately, relocating to the Middle East when they have those blockchain come crypto uh, use cases that they're building and they need clients for. So that's one area where I'm really concerned, and we are talking to Niti Ayogs and all to look at more friendlier policies to deploy blockchain solutions and also to have a more lenient approach towards crypto. Right? I don't say cryptocurrencies and all. CBDC is good, but there has to be some kind of regulation, some kind of rules to be drafted so that people know how to play along with those. Right? And let's come down to India now. Folks, any questions till now?
If you have any question, please raise your hand.
Okay, I'm sorry, I won't be able to see your questions, right? Let me just check my. Okay, I'm assuming there are no questions right now, so I'll keep going, right? But yeah, Priyadarshini, if there are any questions, just let me know by calling it out because I can't see my screen, meeting screen.
Sure.
Okay, so I hope you are again seeing my screen.
It's
Great. So coming down to the Indian markets now, we have seen a lot of, and this is, I think COVID helped a lot in this sense. Anyway, statistically speaking, Indian SaaS market size is supposed to be $6 billion now, and to grow again to 5 times in 4 years. Right. The major, factor that we saw in the adoption of SaaS was in the small to medium enterprises, and that was primarily because of what COVID did to all of us. Right. Earlier, you had your softwares very, very loosely deployed in the SMEs. And if you know, SMEs are like 99% of the type of industry that we have, right? Heavy industries are just 0.5, 0.7%. 99% are small to medium size industries, even micro. And out of that, almost 95% are your micro kind of industries, right, in India. So these guys are very apprehensive. They want to have everything in their control, not outside their laptops. I mean, the founders, But because of COVID, we saw a sea change in their attitudes and their adoption of SaaS-based or cloud-based systems for themselves. And this is a very good trend. And it's even after the COVID problems got over, they have stuck to these solutions because they have developed a trust for them, and this has led to a lot of my or our startups going and catering to the medium and small enterprise segments. However, the demand, the sleeping demand is huge, even if they don't know it, and the supply is still very small in numbers. So there is a lot of ground to cover. There can be so many players in this segment. There is no chance of uh, what do you call cutting into the pie or going on to it being an impediment for the other competitor. There is plenty of room for everyone to grow, is what I want to say, and the pie is only getting larger. And I'll tell you also why, and I hope that also comes up in the discussions of how not only will it help the uh, Indian markets to adapt to SaaS, but also have a trickling effect over the neighboring countries that we are very proud to go into and venture into. You might have seen NPCI going into Nepal. Bangladesh already is going to deploy it very soon, and you'll see a lot many other softwares coming out of India and getting deployed across the world. So in terms of segments, as you may already know, healthcare, logistics, edutech is coming up very well. I think when I was, in your session on Friday, out of the four startups that I saw, I think three and a half were on edutech. So the vertical solution enabled by SaaS is coming to life in so many other verticals now, apart from fintechs, the usual, suspects. We've also seen a lot of encouragement from government, Startup India, Digital India, NASCOMs, and other organizations, incubation centers. They're all coming up. They're all fueling that growth, setting up sandboxes for startups to experiment ideas, look at audiences, even the vertical-wise industries. For example, higher DI for insurance. They are building up sandboxes, and they are pretty solid. They have pretty solid APIs to consume SaaS-based service or help them deploy to potential clients outside. It's another issue that the sandbox kind of didn't pick up speed, but this initiative by the governments and by the separate verticals, insurance, fintech, and other verticals was very, very promising, and it has led to a lot of startups looking into the less penetrated verticals in our country. For example, insurance. For example, sports tech. For example, cybersecurity. So you have to, if you are building such startup, you have to look at these initiatives as well, and maybe be a part of them. Apart from IT, BHA, all, because they give you money, they give you mentorship, and they give you infrastructure at a fraction of a cost. If you were to go to a professional body outside your ecosystem. Then obviously there are challenges that we find in India, access to funding. We'll come to that, and competition from global players, data security concerns, and unfortunately the kind of regulations we are coming into, right, which are taxing my folks in retro, right? That's not a good sign. I hope that will be reversed soon, and in the next 12 to 15 months, we'll see a blow up of more startups coming, building from India and selling it to the world. Key players in the startup ecosystem, especially in SaaS, have been your usual guys that you've been hearing from for so many years now. Zoho, Freshworks, CleverTaps. There are more, but these three have kind of led the fight. Zoho is obviously a billion-dollar company on recurring revenues, not on valuations, which is the best part, right? And there are Freshworks and CleverTaps, which have been started, Zoho included, started out of institutes, colleges, and then have become so, uh, what do you call, omnipresent in not only the Indian but even the global software markets. So that's a very good trend to see, and that's what many of us as VCs and as scale-up folks are very, very bullish about. That if you can build in India with good quality folks chiming in and build a very robust software, you can actually sell it to the world now. Because India may you test it so much that the quality has to be robust for it to work for more than a year. And then if it can work here, the customers outside are a little more savvy, are a little more appreciative, and a little more easier to handle in that sense. So it's a good testing ground, our country. Um, I won't go much deeper into this, but you already should be knowing when to take help, where to take help from. Startup India is one such scheme by the government. maybe Startup Hub, it's doing quite good. The kind of feedback I get from my startups, they have been helpful. The usual bureaucratic process still goes on, but it has been crashed in terms of times. From months, what could happen in months now happens in weeks, which is a very good sign. And then NASCOMs are there, who publish research papers, white papers on so many trends, and have regular knowledge sharing sessions with the entire ecosystem, including startups and all, and are very, very open to not only incubating startups, accelerating startups, but also taking the good practices from here to the Niti Ayogs of the world, right? And that's where I think the voice of the startups, the entrepreneurs, and the clients who want to use more of SaaS software can be heard and can be worked upon. I think this is going to be an important perspective to understand, because sooner or later, when you scale up, you need money to grow money, right? You can't do everything on your own. You can't do everything from bootstrap manner. When you reach a point where you have to scale up fast, that's where you will need VC money. I'm totally against it. I mean, if you can help avoid it, absolutely yes. But there are times when you cannot, and you should be, ready to always have a business actually that is investable, right? Whether you ask for investments or not, investors should be running after you. That's what I feel. And it never harms you to do quick checks in the market to know what your value is in the market, right? So you should always be on, have a keen eye to look at what is the perception about from angels, not only angels, but seed, pre-seed, series A investors towards your company. What are they looking at? What are they finding as pain points in the domain that you are working in? So that always, but yes, you do not have to be running after them or molding your solutions to make them happy, or just starting startups so that you get some good, funky series A funding. That doesn't work. That absolutely doesn't work. So what we've seen, investment boom. Many of the investments that the VCs are doing are in SaaS-based startups, whether it's deep tech, whether it's fintech, health tech, or anything. The first thing they ask is, how would you scale it up? And I mean, licensed version, yes, they kind of turn their faces still, but when you say SaaS and it's enabled for the cloud, it's enabled for subscription-based services, that's where they really are keen to do those follow-up calls. Um, I do not want to say that it's the only thing that works or the only thing that the pieces are interested in, but it is a very, very important component now. I mean, if you have to deploy it through other means or scale it up through other means, your software, you have to be very convincing about it, right? So competition, yes, you might have seen we are getting a lot more selective um, on with startups to fund, and I think you might have heard very recently that the funding boom has turned into a bust, right? I mean, the same quarter last year, we had 80% more investments coming to SaaS startups as compared to today, which is just I think $630 million, right? And mind you, 2022 was the year when we got, I think, let me check, $5 billion of funding, which is much more than 2021, 2020, and all those years. Today, as we stand, that funding has reduced to $7 billion, right, from 2022 financial year end to this year financial year. And reasons are that the startup quality or the startup USPs have become very difficult to discern. Secondly, the founders have very little idea about the competition. When I ask them about competition, they always say that we are the only ones doing this. So, and we are competing against the top guys who are much more pricier, much more difficult to deploy. But that is not the right perspective, right? Your competition is not Salesforce as a SaaS-based startup, say on CRM. Your competition is also the guy next door who is a little ahead of you and who's building a very solid solution and who has gotten customer traction, because you and he most probably will reach out to the same customer if you are hyper locally near to each other, right? So you should be knowing these kind of startups as well, and these are the ones who will be running in that race with you. So you should have a very clear USP, and USP can be not in the idea but in the execution as well, right? A tap time to deploy could be minutes as compared to even hours from that startup's perspective, right? That is also USP. But you should be knowing very, very well who your competitors are, right? Because VCs inadvertently will do their own research as well, and they will come with their own research. Most of the good VCs, right? So you have to outthink them, and it's perfectly fine if you have a competition, right? There is nothing wrong with it, but you should be doing where you are playing and where they are playing, and what is your speed to be at the same level with the competitors. So that is something that I really feel lacking with my startups when they pitch to us, and something that you should really ponder upon when you're going outside for funding, or even when you're doing it yourself. You should be knowing who your competitors are. Obviously, scalability is a focus area for VCs, but if you're doing a SaaS-based startup, it's more or less covered. And many of our startups do take up those AWS subscriptions, Azure, and other things to uh, quickly prove that the solutions can be deployed and can be also used by end customers who are sitting remotely. The fourth point, which still to which still we struggle to get answers to, and it could be because of the markets, is solid unit economics, right? It's very difficult for startups to be unit positive right from day one, which is understood. But if I look at our expenses and I don't see a way for us to normalize that against losses in the next 18 months, then it's a bad sign, because SaaS is a high margin game, right? Easily 60 to 80% margins can be earned on SaaS based deployments, right? Which means you should be getting to the profitability path much sooner than any of your other kind of deployers in that sense, right? So if you are not convinced, and you can't convince me that you will be EBITDA positive with say 1,000 customers in the next 12 15 months, there is an amber sign for me, if not a red flag, that then there is something wrong that's happening. That brings me to the next point. What are the challenges faced by Indian SaaS founders, right? And before challenges, I would like to elaborate on what are the good things that are happening in the Indian SaaS founding teams as compared to the global world. And this experience I've gotten after attending so many sessions, discussions from Y Combinators to European accelerators to South American accelerators to African. And Africa is a very solid country with very solid software folks out there. Even Vietnam, Southeast Asia, or APAC region is very solid. But mostly, the problem that we have found across the world, barring these two or three regions, is that we are blessed in having a very solid technical founder in the founding team, right at the start, right? So many of these of our Indian startups don't have to go outside to build solutions that they have envisioned technologically, right? But in US and other countries, that's a real problem. They have a business idea, they have a solution in mind, but to implement that, to build those algorithms and all, it takes them a lot of time and effort to find the right guy, and it's quite mostly outsourced. Or they are pulled back in once they develop an MVP and prove to the founding team, leadership team, that yes, what we are building is what you wanted, and we can be a part of your internal teams, which is something we take for granted in India, but it's a very big boon to us. So that's one. However, there are challenges now that I see in hiring technical people, not in terms of quality. You still get one very good, solid guy, developer from five. But when it comes to technical architecture, when it comes to looking at scale of the solution that has to be deployed for, there is a problem there. Corporate folks are absolutely, I mean, 1 in 100 is only the number you'll get of good people. Well, most of them have done patchwise coding, and they have no idea about the entire system, and they don't apply their knowledge to look at software, programs, how the patterns and all. And I'm telling you this because we interviewed a lot of guys from Bharat Pay, Byju's and all for our own companies for technical architect positions, and these guys are 2 to 3 year experienced folks doing pretty well, getting very good pay packages from their respective companies, even 7 to 8 years of experience. But when it came to simply writing some software, very basic software, with minor tweaks to it, miserably failed. 90% of the guys, even 95% of the guys, right? So the kind of quality that we're seeing in software development in India is not a very good sign. The other important aspect I want to tell you is attrition rates are high, and there is a problem of integrity and ethics, right, in software development field, especially when it comes to us developers. The NDAs are not honored. Uh, when you leave, there is no documentation followed up, so it sets back a startup by a few weeks at least, if not months, when their key software guys leave or technical guys leave. So this is something you have to look into when you are building your own startups. Good thing is, IIT I'm assuming the guys are solid in technology. But when you go outside or when you merge solutions to bigger use cases, that is something you'll have to kind of constantly work on. You'll have to take ownership of not only your solution, but even deploying from the other perspective, right? That will create a huge difference. That will create a huge USP for you guys as well. Funding hurdles, absolutely. As I told you, funding has gone down in the last 12 to 15 months. And that's because of regulations, because of retro taxes, because of barricading of foreign investment flows to India. Not a good sign, but it has to be played the way it is. So every business that you build has to be bootstrappable. You have to rely on your own funds or build solutions in such a lean manner that even if funding doesn't come to you from outside, you should not go down under. Right? This luxury is no more with us. Funding luxury is no more with us. And I'm talking about good startups with solid founders from the solid pedigrees that they come from. It's kind of pervasive in India now, the way it is. Global competition, yes. This is first-hand information. Many US, Israeli, and Southeastern countries, startups from these countries are willing to set shop in India and mark down prices. And they have very solid coding standards or quality standards already, and they are willing to come down on the number on the pricing of their products because they understand that India is a volume game, volume market. So this is something that Indian startup founders will have to start looking at in terms of competition. It is just not easy from it is just not a one-way street that we go from here to the global markets. The global markets are also looking at us. And you won't believe the number of Indian company, Australian, US companies, and even companies from Bangladesh who want to set up shop in India. Vietnam is a powerhouse when it comes to software development, right? Software folks, and it uses most of the software for export purposes. So Indonesia is a very good market again for fintechs. Unfortunately, the regulations are much weaker than ours, and every year, almost 700 fintech startups get blacklisted in Indonesia, right? But they are very keen, the good ones, the uh, uh, Go. I don't remember the name exactly, but there's a fintech company, right, that has set up shop in India from Indonesia. There are a couple of more coming in. There are companies that are banks or fintechs from Africa who are very keen to set up shop in India because their solutions are very much similar to what Indian customers need and at almost the same price or even cheaper than what we produce here for. Okay, and then the market reach struggles. What we've seen is many of us as founders um, do acquire 3 to 5 B2B customers, do acquire the first 1,000, 2,000 B2C customers when we set up shop. But it's at that stage when we have to grow rapidly. That's where we struggle as founders because we've almost exhausted our resources, we've exhausted our relations. And now to set up the structure so that my next layer of team can build on the market gaps is not just there. So most of the times founders are looking at the sales cycle from the beginning to the end, which is not right. I mean, after 2 years at least, there should be a second in command who can do steps A to X of your sales cycle, and it's only for steps Y and Z that you as founders have to come in. That should mean what scalability is, right? But that is not something we see a lot, and that's where we kind of want our guys to be very well mentored, not in terms of technology. They'll figure it out. It's not no rocket science. You guys come from very solid institutes, but it's the business sense, how to sell, how to look at growth. If not even doing it yourself, then at least looking at the right folks who can be in your team to do it for you, right? But you still have to be as a founder, you have to be the salesperson of your team, of your company. There is no escaping that. I have suffered because of that, because I thought कि कोई और बेच देगा, मैं बनाऊंगा. It doesn't work that way. Even the CTO to the CBO to the CEO, every guy in the CXO team has to be a salesperson. Even the senior leaders in the team, when you hire them, they have to be salespersons as well. Whether it's the VP of technology. So this is something you have to start orienting yourselves and mentoring your teams to do for you across the board. So with that, I will kind of stop talking and take up any questions, any discussion points, which you may already have by now. So guys, go ahead, shoot your questions.
If you have any questions, please raise your hand. So, sir, I asked a question. So my question is, you said that Middle East is like a very small market, but even though it's like easily tappable, whereas in India the market is huge, but not much, it's very hard to tap. So you're not audible. Good. Unmute. Could you
I'm
please
getting a lot of noise from the background. Can you type your question or the question of
okay,
class?
sure. By then, Aryan, could you please ask the question?
Hello, sir. Uh, uh, so my question is that, as you said, that it is repeating. Uh, the Indian market is like quite competitive, and in the sense that the consumers are like not very welcoming to the products. In comparison, the Middle East and Southeast Asian markets are quite welcoming to the things, and even the European and US markets. So, how do you think the SaaS founders can scale to those actually build for those countries and then try of coming to India to sell to those customers?
This was Aryan, right?
Yeah.
Aryan, what I meant to say was, as compared to the other markets, Middle East and Southeast Asia and all, Indian markets are less appreciative of technology, especially the small to medium income, small to medium industries, right? Because they know only two things. And however you want to pitch to them, you have to make one of these two things very clear to them. Key, your solution, how does it help them to cut costs or increase their profits or their margins? These are the only two parameters they listen to, right? You can be a very solid deep tech company, you can be a very solid guy who has built a very solid solution and everything, but if it doesn't speak to them in either of these terms, it's going to be very difficult for you to deploy that solution, right? That is one. As compared to that, the Southeast Asian, Middle Eastern markets are much more friendlier. I mean, yes, these factors, either of these have to be there, but even if you tell them that, my technology is going to get you a solid movers advantage, first mover advantage for the next 1 or 2 years, you might have to spend a little bit of money more than your competitors, but in eventuality, in the near term, it will set you apart. They understand this part. However, having said that, if you're an Indian-based startup and you do not have any customer in India, it's very difficult for you to justify your solution to the foreign markets. Because the first thing they'll ask you is, how many solutions, how many clients do you have in India? If you have none, then obviously that validation at home has not happened. Then why should I trust you as a foreign market, right? So you have to take that poison pill or that pain pill, have to deploy it somewhere here in a reasonable manner, get some paid customers going for you, right? And then reach out to outside markets. Also, the problem of quality is much understood outside. I've never taken my startups to the US markets in one go. They have to go in a phase-wise manner. Where India karte, let's do 2 to 3 clients in India. Then let's have some clients in the Singaporean markets, right? Singapore is a very solid country in that sense. It's as good as the US and much nearer, and then much more savvier also. However, quality-wise, US is at the, what I feel is at the top of it, because they require very high quality standards for their companies. Ideally, they require a physical handshake to happen, but even if it's somebody else who's vouching for them, that solution has to be very, very well built with a proper customer care solution channel built into it. That's when you are ready to go to the US, when you have these things. But the neighboring markets, Singapore, Indonesia, Vietnam, even Bangladesh for that matter, are very good markets to delve out from India, and also the Middle Eastern markets. So to all my startups that I mentor, I do mentor, I tell them that you should have 2 or 3 paying clients in India. POCs bhi ho running, chalega, you should be paid, and then go to the neighboring ones first, and then after 2 to 3 years, when you have built a robust solution, US is always on the cards, right? And the margins are huge, so you get profitable actually within 8 to 10 months, and the product doesn't have to be tinkered along much. Does that answer your question, Arya?
Yes, sir. That clearly answers my question. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Instead of type the question in the chat box.
Okay. Also, guys, if you are asking me a question, it would be helpful for me to know what kind of startup you're working on. If you're working in a startup, I can probably customize my answer to better fit what you're exactly looking for in terms of your startup strengths and weaknesses.
Also, I'm just asking us in general, which is more investable or not.
Okay, so I didn't get a question yet. Have I missed anything?
I'll type it again.
Well, you can speak now, Priyadashini. It's much more.
So is it clear now?
I can, yeah.
Okay. So you said Middle East being like easily tappable market as compared to India, even though Middle East is like much smaller. So which market, according to VC, is more investable? Because in market like India, even a small conversion is like a huge margin. So yeah, sir, like which is more investable? Like is it small but easily tappable, or like huge but like difficult to tap but like gives huge margin?
So this, when I look at it from a VC perspective, the first thing I look at is say, and I'm assuming that you're talking about Indian VCs first, and then maybe the global VC, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm an Indian VC, what I look at is key SaaS solutions, especially, have to have a volume focus on them, right? Because your margins, though huge, it's always good to have a solid volume playing for you. Otherwise, if you have a very niche solution, which is also fine, it should be priced very well. It should not be underpriced. And 90% of the startups that I see are underpricing themselves for some reason or the other, because they just look at how to cut their own costs, right? It takes me 500 rupiah, 500 rupees to build a software. I'll price it at 510 rupees. This is not sustainable for you at all, right? And you're understanding yourself. It's just it is just because you do not have the confidence to market it or to be shamelessly, uh, forthright about it, that you're doing these things. So it's fine to take help from outside, from mentors and all, but you should be you should actually have somebody in the team to price it very well now. First 2 3, I mean, I'm not for free pilots at all. I think every pilot should be a paid pilot, especially if it's going to a corporate, right? Because they have the time, they have the money to at least pay you for expenses that you have incurred for deploying the solution. But otherwise, uh, pricing becomes very important, and you don't have to get the right price at the beginning. It is okay, evolutionary, chalega. But if you start with the same underpriced product for 12 to 15 months, then there is something wrong with your pricing model. There is something wrong with the business teams, right? You can't just build software and expect people to buy your software because it is very good, and you somehow start getting profits and margins. You have to play the game as a high margin game eventually, if you are not a volume based business. So that is one. To your questions about VC, what do they look for? They look for key moat kya hai business ka. If this guy is telling me that they can deploy, as simple as that, if that TAT to deploy is hours as compared to the competitor, which takes weeks, absolutely a moat, right? I would be glad to jump on and invest in them. Also, many times, and this is a session we can take later on, a smaller one. Many guys, many startups, including mine, just look out for any VC that can come onto their board, right? But you should be very careful in which kind of VCs you are pulling in. If the VC does not have anything for you apart from money, it won't help you for long. VC ऐसा चुनिए जिसका portfolio is complementary to your own offerings, because that can give you a lot of scale right from the day one of investments. And that's what a good VC brings, solid network. He will know that, okay, boss, I'll give only $12,000 to you, but your solution can be deployed through one of my portfolio startups to the clients that you're looking for. So your time to deploy to a client, which would have taken you months, can be done within weeks, which means you start earning revenues much faster. And everybody loves revenues. Everybody loves cash flows, right? If you are cash flow positive, no matter what your revenues or what your profitability is, you always command a seat at the table from a VC's perspective. Cash flow, every startup ignores, but this should be your king. And I think that is what Vijay Shekhar Sharma also mentioned from Paytm's perspective. अब ये बात अलग है, Paytm positive है नहीं है मुझे नहीं पता है, but at least the mindset now is much more correct from their perspective. So yes, so this is what the VCs look for. The outside VCs, the global VCs have burned a lot of money. The Sequoia of the world have burned a lot of money in stupid, crappy investments, right? Without thinking harder. They just saw AI, deep tech and all, invested. None of them knew the product. And now they are paying the price for it, right? The Indian VCs, on the other hand, are a little more understanding now because the money used to come from the LPs outside the country, right? So they have to justify their margins much before then. For example, Sequoia US would still be under the headquarter founding teams, right? But Sequoia India had to produce the results because it was farther from the epicenter. So they had to they had to prove their profitability much faster than the guys who was like people sitting right next to me, right? So this they understood and they started creating the research teams very robustly to understand each and every domain that the startups were coming to them for investments, right? So there is something you'll see Indian VCs will adopt to the game much faster than the global VCs, but it will take time. And if you have to go to the VCs anyway, make sure that you do not dilute yourself much. You have a fairly equitable seat at the discussion table. Does that answer your question?
Actually, sir, like I wanted to ask from VC perspective, is that a clear yes or no answer, like this product? Is it Middle East or like India?
No, it's not a clear yes or no answer. It's not.
Okay, sir. Very good question. You could raise your hands or tap in the chat box. Okay, sir. So tap now. Thank you for like the time and sharing your experience and expertise with us. We definitely got to learn a lot of insights. And thank you for all the participants for joining in the session too. We are surely looking forward to like more sessions from you. Thanks.
Take care and always go and build your things. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.